Hello and welcome back to the Oriire podcast, the podcast that tells African stories. I'm Ceci.
And I'm Halima. Hi, everyone. On today's episode, we're going to be discussing about the African concept of land. And we have Imisi with us. I'm guessing by now everyone knows who Imisi is. Imisi, say hi.
Hi guys, it's good to be here again.
Yeah, so we're going to be discussing the concept of land in Africa, like contrasting the pre-colonial time and now like in the post-colonial era. So Imisi, do you want to go ahead and like give us a backstory of what land means and stuff like that in pre-colonial Africa?
Okay. Well, land is generally discussed from an economic point of view, not just in Africa, but in many places. But in Africa, in the pre-colonial times, land used to lie more in the place of cosmology, philosophy, and spirituality. And that's because Africans have always believed in and they've always revered three planes of existence. This is also known as the concept of time and space in the African world. So Africans have always believed that there's the land of the living, land of the dead, and the land of the unborn. I don't know whether you guys have heard about this. Have you?
Lots of
I
movies.
exactly. I'm trying to think of like, is it like cited thingy? But I get the three concepts of existence.
Yeah, so it's like a thing. That's what Africans believed in, and that also equates with them believing that there's a celestial plane, a terrestrial plane, as well as an extraterrestrial plane. And so these three levels of existence are always in communication and in connection. And for this connection to be complete or to actualize this connection, land becomes very important. So the African concept of land basically is that land is seen as a spiritual entity, as something of philosophy, as something that gives identity to people, and something that gives something of that is beyond a commodity or an economic entity.
Okay, interesting. But Imisi, do you think, and Ceci as well, do you guys think that in pre-colonial Africa, land was not like, I get that it was all these things, but there was also the economic aspect because you guys know that people used to give birth to a lot of children so they could like amass more land and like grow more crops or something? Or was that during the colonial era?
I feel like even during the pre-colonial era, land was probably important to people for economic reasons, like you said, because like the more land you have, probably the more food you have, especially when you have a larger family. So with the more land you have, the more like your family can till and the more food you can produce for them to eat. But and I want to know Mrs. perspective on this from a historical like.
Yeah, you're actually right. Land as a means of production or by extension an economic entity was not, I can't say it was squarely inexistent during the pre-colonial time, but the point is that it was subsumed under the cosmological and the spiritual concepts, like it was subsumed under under a broader concept. And how you would know this is, for example, during the advent of the Europeans, there was the orientation of the Europeans generally is that land is strictly a commodity. That's why you have the issue of, that time you had serfs in, the Anglo-Saxon periods and all of that issue of serfs. You had vassals, you had fiefdom. So land was like a thing. So, for example, when the white people came, they saw vast lands, and that was like an opportunity for them. It was like a windfall. And you could even see this in the Berlin Conference, for example, where Africa was partitioned, just like a national cake. Like Portugal says, okay, they want to take this part of Africa. Germany says, okay, they want this part. So it was like the land is seen like an economic entity strictly. So there's nothing beyond that. When Africa is also seen as that. I mean, people inherit lands, people want to have lands for economic use, but that's not the primary importance of land. So that's my own opinion on that.
Oh, nice.
Okay, we also have to remember that with talk of land, we also have to think of resources that come with land. So a lot of the colonial struggle for Africa basically was due to the resources that were embedded in the land, which is like, I don't know if pre-colonial times people really had those resources in mind so much to think of them as commodities and things like that, because possibly the land was not even that excavated and that tilled, so people were not really aware of what they sat on until colonialism came and started making people aware that, okay, you could just be lucky enough to have a house that petrol sits on, or a house that there's gold on that, or something like that.
I think that okay, I think my thing with this thing is that I like to think that Africans in pre-colonial Africa had some sort of agency, right? So I think that they knew that the land they had or something, it had like resources in it, but I think the issue is that they didn't know what they could turn these resources into, if that makes sense. Because I mean, there was the trade and barter system, so that means people knew that if they produce something and another person produced something, they could exchange it for something. There was the cowrie thing as currency. So I just think that it wasn't in the colonial sense. I don't know if I'm making sense. Do you guys get my argument or not?
Yeah. Yes, you are definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, you are. But I think the point here is that yes, there was that. We had barter and, like you said, those currencies, but we didn't have a way of. First is we didn't have a way of harnessing these resources, of harnessing the entirety of these resources. That's on the one hand. And on the other hand, we did not even place emphasis on these resources because our emphasis were on other things during the pre-colonial times. And why I think this is the case is because Africans have been mystical people. Like they've always believed in mystical life. So what they see land as is like something that leads like a physical portal to something else, like something that is more spiritual than anything else. That's why when people talk about land, for example, you hear about ancestral worships. That is, maybe ancestral worship has to do with like idolization of people that are dead, people that had tremendous influence on people while they were alive. So a lot of people tend to reverence that idealistic prowess, and they always appease dead people. And this can only be done through land. So imagine how important that is, that you can intercede for the living through the dead and using land as a vehicle. Do you understand?
Yeah.
So this is so like when you have a drink and you pour the first sip or something on it.
Yeah, that's similar. That's libation. Libation is like you're just giving respect to the dead. But ancestral worship is more than libation. Ancestral worship is worshiping dead people that had influence on the people while they were alive. You're actually worshiping them that, okay, this dead person is closer to the gods. So you're worshiping them so that they can intercede for you in real life. And that sounds really important than any form of resources material resource that the land has over the people.
Yeah, so Imisi, why don't you tell us about your perspective on how land has kind of, or how the idea of land in the minds of Africans has kind of evolved from pre-colonial times to present times now?
Oh, okay. Well, in my opinion, I'll first state some of the concepts of land. That's the essence of this topic in the first place. I already said that land is not seen as a commodity or an economic entity, but land is like an individual possession. It's not an individual possession. It's like a gift from God. Africans have always believed that many things are gifts from God. When you have a child, they'd be like, it's a gift from God. Even when people die, they'd be like, it's God that made it so. So we've always been religious people. So land is a gift from God. And land also functions as something that has judicial power. Okay? So land, for example, when, let's say someone has been betrothed and then that person goes to cheat with someone else. Like I've seen a story. There was a story one time. One of the greatest authors in Africa wrote, Elechi Amadi. He talked about how someone cheated, and then someone was betrothed to someone else, and the person cheated, and so the person was just by the lake one day, and a cobra spat on the person, and the person died.
Oh,
So,
wow. Interesting.
So yes,
Where is
that's
this
to tell
from?
you.
I've never heard of this.
Yeah, that's the name of that text is The Concubine that by Elechi Amadi. So that's just an example. I'm just trying to state how land can have judicial power. Like it functions as a jury. Is that right?
Some sort of law, right?
Yeah, like some sort of law or something. Mm-hmm. So that's also an important part of land. And of course, I said that land functions as a physical portal into a spiritual realm. That is, people can talk to their gods through land. That is when they pour libations on the floor, when they have like effigies of gods, and then they pour things on it and everything. So it's like a physical portal into a spiritual realm. Land also, functions as a superstructure that is ensures that people take care of the environment and wildlife. So that's why we have taboos. That's why we have injunctions and everything in the pre-colonial times. Like there were sacred sites that you could not go to. There were pools and waters that you could not bathe inside just because people believed that spirits were dwelling in that kind of water. So land was all those things in the pre-colonial times. But with the advent of the white people, there was a deprivation, not just a psychological deprivation, really, like a physical collection of the dwelling place of the African peoples, as well as, a reduction in the spiritual presence in the land of African people. So Africans started to see land beyond the spiritual being as an entity as well. Because, of course, when you collect people's land and start to dwell on it and start to partition it, lease it, sell it, exchange it, people will start seeing it as something different. Mm-hmm. And so, like many other cultures of the white people that we have collected, I think we have started to see land as a commodity as well. Yep. What do you guys think?
I find that people tend to actually idealize the pre-colonial era and think of it as some kind of, wonderful era where it was a land of milk and honey and there were no problems and no disputes. I mean, it is, I'm sure it was much better than the colonial era itself and even post-colonial. But I'm not so sure if I would say that, people had this idealistic view of land and there was no kind of human element of greed and stuff involved and of like pride and of all these vices, basically. Because I believe that humans are humans, and humans have always been humans. So I think that there must have been land disputes, similar to how they are now. Perhaps not as drawn out and not on the same basis, but I think, it's likely that there were also issues regarding land and also disputes regarding land and also, fights, and maybe they were resolved in different ways, however. I don't know. What do you think, Helen?
I actually agree with you. I think that we tend to romanticize like what happened before the white people came in, like on the African continent. And with land, I think that because if you guys, there's some books I've read and stuff, but they're mostly fictional. Wait, fictionals are the ones that are not real, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah. They're mostly like fictional articles and books and stuff, but they're just like stories that say how one of the reasons why the transatlantic slave trade thingy was successful is because Africans were telling other Africans to take like the land of other people. Do you get? So that means land has not always been this like, I mean, it has like religious spirituality and all those things. It has all those values, but still Africans have always viewed land as something of like economic related, something that can make them wealthier and stuff. Yeah, a commodity basically.
Yeah, well, I agree with you guys. I can't say, I mean, we always paint this perfect picture of the pre-colonial times, but I don't think there's ever a period of utopia. So it had its own veins as well. But I think the point is just that how the white people painted it was not the way it was. They were like, we did not have anything. That there was no language, there was no linguistic prowess, that we only reasoned between the bouts of maybe shelter, food, and maybe sex, that there was no structure. Do you get? Mm-hmm. And this was not the case. Like, we had structure, we had law, we had the way our societies functioned. We weren't perfect, right? But of course, we were people and we were thinking beings. Mm-hmm. So I think that's it. And do you guys think, when you talk about patriarchy and land, what do you guys think? Do you guys have an opinion on that? Like in the present day?
I have very strong opinions. If I start talking, I will not stop. But in some parts of Africa, especially, let's say, the eastern part of Nigeria, I can say, although, there are a lot of disputing opinions on this. So people say, it is actually our heritage that says that women are not allowed to inherit land. Some people say, actually, no, your heritage says women are allowed to inherit land. It's colonialism that gave you this idea, and you think it's your heritage. And then there are other people that, there are just a lot of different perspectives. And then even there's a Supreme Court ruling in Nigeria now, which mandates that law can and should pass on to the female relative, the closest relative of the person who died, let's say, as an inheritance.
Yes.
But we know that that's not the case. We know that sometimes people will come for the family of a man who didn't have any male children and say, well, actually your brother should have that land, or your male relatives should divide it and leave nothing for your wife and children. Or alternatively, they will say, oh no, we will take the land and we'll take care of it for you, and then we'll disburse money to the wife and children, which I find utterly ridiculous. In fact, recently there was a Twitter debate on this. I don't know if any of you guys are on Twitter.
Yes, I saw that recently.
And I was just, my mouth was open, because I thought these people are in the village. I did not know that they're among us in real life.
I didn't see the Twitter debate.
There was people tweeting all kinds of things. Someone said that if his brother dies, that it is his responsibility to take over his properties and disburse as necessary to his wife and children, that his wife should not be in charge of it because she will just waste all the money. And I'm just like, what kind of greedy pig? So this is what you're plotting. Don't you realize how evil you are being? Instead of you to think about how you can make your own money and be successful, you are waiting for this guy to die so you can steal his money and be benevolent. You think you are a benevolent, kind God. Who are no one. I don't know. I really hate the way that a lot of people think that being male gives them some kind of divine rights to dictate the lives of other people, as if they are automatically smarter. There's nothing like that, to be honest. I know a lot of dumbass men, I know a lot of smart-ass men, and I know the same of women. But just by virtue of being a man, it doesn't mean that you are automatically better than any woman, because I'm sure that I can point and find 10 women that are smarter than you. You know what I mean? So it rankles to things like that. It's so offensive. But these things will probably still go on in 20 years. So what am I saying?
Yes, and then when you said by virtue of being a man, I think you should also say by virtue of it being culture. Many people, just because this part of culture favors them, they just want to hold on to it. Like this issue of inheritance in the East, it's a culture thing. That's how they do. That's how, when the husband dies, even in the olden days, the brothers could take over the wife, the wife become theirs. That used to happen a lot until it started to change recently.
But a lot of historians say it's not culture. They say it's not culture. It is colonialism. You know what I mean? But then the thing is, even if it's culture,
that's what I'm saying. They claim that it is culture, right? But culture evolves. That's what culture does. And there are so many things that we used to do that used to be part of our culture that we don't do anymore. But because this part favors them, a set of people, they just want it to continue. And I can't consider that culture anymore. That's just cruel, really. So that's just cruel.
I agree with what you guys have said. I think that people tend to mask their wicked ways under the guise of culture. So a lot of things that are not even culture, they will say it's culture just because they want to like get away with it, or like Imisi said, it favors them. And yeah, I agree with you, Ceci. I think property rights, especially like concerning women, is something we need to like work on the African continent, because women are constantly cheated out of like their inheritance and stuff like that, and it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah. And it's bad enough that it's not just women being cheated out. Like that's a whole other layer to it. But then people cheat out even their own like nephews and grandchildren. Like they would even cheat their own family, male family. So really, it just goes further to show that when they say, oh, it's because you're a woman, it's just a pretext. Because even if you weren't, they would still try their best to steal it from you. But, you know, this just gives them a convenient excuse.
Yeah.
And do you know how much difference what we're talking about, how much difference what we're talking about now and what we were talking about minutes ago is? Like, we're just talking about how land was not a commodity, and now see how much of a commodity land is in the present day. Just to tell you how much has changed and how much needs to change. I think our government has to do, like, they have to do more when it comes to issues of land and property rights, really.
And I think, as I always say, as individuals as well, I think we need to do better. We need to become like more ethical about certain things and like do better. Honestly, let's just stop waiting for the government. I think something that this whole, oh my goodness, I'm going to deviate a bit, but did you guys see this picture that was trending on Twitter like a few weeks ago about the state, like how dirty Aba is? Do you guys know Aba in?
I know
Yes,
Aba,
I know
but
Aba
Did you
in
guys see the
Abia
picture?
State, but I didn't see that picture, no.
Oh my goodness, that place is so dirty. Like, it is, oh my goodness, it's very, very dirty. And I'm like, so people keep pouring dirt into this place. Is it that none of them, nobody has the common sense to say that, okay, let me go and throw my dirty somewhere else or something? Anyways, the point is that we need to start taking responsibility for ourselves as well, not just wait for the government. So in property rights,
I mean, I agree with that.
yeah.
I was going to say, I agree with you saying we need to start taking responsibility for ourselves. But I am a very, I won't say I'm a studier of human nature. A studier of I'm an observer of human nature. And I like, I've come to the conclusion that people will not stop doing something so far as they still gain a benefit from it. So saying like we need to change is the people that are willing to change are not the people that we need to speak to. Those people that are not willing to change, those are the dangerous ones. And those ones will not change because they are gaining something from it. So all those people stealing land from their relatives, they are gaining some. What is the incentive for them to stop doing that? There's none. So there has to be like a carrot and stick approach. And the stick needs to be a huge stick carried by a very large person so that they will feel threatened adequately.
I feel like we've lost track of the African concept of land.
Yeah, it feels so, but we're talking about valid things.
Land. Yeah, okay.
So, yeah.
What does land mean to you as an African?
That's a complicated question. I guess as an African, land just means home to me. Like, it just means where I'm from, you know. But I don't know that it has any particularly strong connotation apart from just representing where I'm from, because I don't have land, you know, and that's why. So if I had land, I would have a different perspective on it. What do you think?
Yeah, for me, land could mean so many things, but to me, I just want to hold on to the identity part of land. So just like Ceci said, I want to see land as more than a feeling. Do you get, like a place that I can say I can call my home, more than a physical representation. So yeah, land is like an identity to me, like home. So anywhere I go, I always say land, not in the physical sense, but in terms of feeling.
Interesting. You guys are so deep. That's nice. For me, land is property. Like, I see land as a commodity. I want to amass so much land to sell and build stuff on it, and then just be part of this capitalist world that we live in.
I don't know. I think I have more of a nomadic bent when I think about land, like because I don't want to amass land. I don't want to. I mean, to be honest, I would like to have a nice place to live. So maybe one plot or something or two. I don't know how they count plots. I don't get what you mean, Sha. But I would like to have my own place. But then really, I would like to be able to go anywhere I want to go. I don't have any like particular desire to be tied down in one place forever. So I feel like, I like the idea of, that's another thing we should talk about one day, is like how basically the world gatekeeps Africans. And it's hard for us to go from place to place the way that other people can. Just imagine backpacking with a Nigerian passport. Can you think of the stress?
So yeah, I think we've come to the end of this episode, right?
Yes.
We hope you guys enjoyed this. I think I'll call it a rant or a ramble because I don't even know. It started off as something like, I don't know, but towards the end we started discussing about stuff. But anyways, we hope you enjoyed this episode. Don't forget to follow this podcast, share it with your friends, family, colleague, and don't forget to interact with us on our social media platforms. On Twitter, we're Oriire_Africa, and Oriire is spelled ORIIRE_Africa. On Twitter is the same handle, and check out our website at oriire.com.
Yes, and if you have any perspectives on this topic, or you have any ideas about what you would like us to talk about next, we would love to hear from you. So you can go on our website, oriire.com, and just contact us, send us a message. You can send us a message on Twitter, Instagram, where we have the same handle that Halima just said. And we would really, really like to hear from you. And we would like to have you on the show as well. Also, I want to mention that if you like Oriire and you like our content, please support us. You can go on our website, oriire.com, and find a link to donate to our Patreon, to sign up for our Patreon, so that you can get, exclusive content. You can hear from us directly and just support us because you like us. We appreciate it, Thanks for listening.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.